Hi, I'm Kirby Allison, excited to be back here in beautiful London. Today we venture outside of St. James's and Mayfair to one of the city's oldest districts, the City of London, to Sadler's Hall, home to the Worshipful Company of Cordwainers, the ancient guild that has guarded the craft of shoemaking in this city for more than 700 years. There, we begin a new journey with one of London's newest independent shoemakers, William Laborde. I chose William to commission a shoe that, itself, takes me back to the very beginning of my love affair with shoemaking, a pair of formal opera pumps. They were refined, elegant, and transported me back to the era of London where black tie was commonplace, and ever since then, I dreamt of one day having them made bespoke. Well, after more than 20 years, that day has finally arrived. And in our latest series, we embark on a journey together to not only see these shoes begin to be made, but explore the history of shoemaking itself. So join me, Kirby Allison, as we explore the world of quality, craftsmanship, and tradition here in London. William.
Kirby.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure having you.
Well, I have to say this is quite exciting. You know, as much time as I've spent in London, I'm often guilty of traveling the same trotted path, and I've never been here to Sadler's Hall.
Well, we had an exchange about making opera pumps, which is kind of the most traditional thing you could commission, and I thought, why not come here at the heart of London shoemaking, Sadler's Hall, which is the home of the Cordwainers now.
Okay.
And the company's been around since 1272.
Only 1272, no kidding.
First incorporated, which recognized the company as a group.
Okay.
And then receiving the Royal Charter in 1492.
Wow.
Or 47, which gave it royal assent to operate as its own sort of small administrative body, organizing and registering the whole of the shoe trade in London and externally within a 2-mile radius.
And so it's been an official, continuously operating organization for that long.
Yeah, uninterrupted for 700 years.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever you think of shoemaking as an ancient tradition, I mean, that really
kind of embodies it most,
is even more so than I even imagined.
Exactly, yeah.
And what is the role of the Cordwainers Guild?
So initially, they would have organized the entire trade. So they had the right of search, which was very important. And basically, it gave them the right within the City of London, on behalf of the King, to send people to kind of check for quality.
Okay.
And anything that may not have been up to standard would have been taken off the market, essentially, which maintained standards. And then they also organized the whole the religious life for the Cordwainers. So it was kind of a brotherhood spiritually, in terms of craftsmanship. It registered a whole life for somebody who worked in the shoe and boot trade.
Yeah. And is it common for shoemakers today to be members of the Worshipful Company of Cordwainers?
Still, yeah, absolutely. So there are people within the Cordwainers who had ancestors who were Cordwainers, the big shoemaking names, the Churches, the Peels, Chamberlains, etc. And of course, it's still up until today. So it's a mixture of people who've been working in the City of London with ancestry within shoemaking, and then people coming in from the trade, from the craft, and joining the guild.
Really? Okay.
To kind of make everything go forward.
Yeah. And are you a member?
Yes, I'm in the process of becoming a freeman.
Oh, really? Okay, that's exciting.
So I thought with that, this would be kind of my occasion to contribute to bringing a light back to the company, to its work, a lot of its charitable work, which is now the main cause of the company, helping veterans, helping the army, healthcare, and of course training within the shoe trade as well.
Yeah. So that's incredible. I mean, one of the things that I've been drawn towards with shoemaking is the fact that you can have shoes made today by someone using the same techniques, you know, not just for decades, but in many cases, centuries.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, learning about the history of the Cordwainers, you know, really takes that back almost a millennia.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be great. We can have a look at some of the archive here, show you some of the past masterpieces that have been produced for the Guild, and maybe inspire some of our work into your commission.
Yeah, exciting. Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Thank you. Wow, look at all of this.
Yeah. This is only just a little snippet, but yeah, we're up here in the company's offices.
Okay.
And I just wanted to kind of show you a little bit of the history,
Mm-hmm.
a few of the treasures that the company holds, which will give you a sense of what we're dealing with here, how old the company goes back. And so obviously it was created in the medieval times and then consolidated during the Tudor period. And one of the things that most of the London guilds are known for is the company silver, the company treasure. And here we've got the company's mace, which is carried through all the ceremonial events and goes back to Tudor times. So it's sort of.
And who would carry the mace?
The mace would be carried by the master, who also wears the pendant, the master's pendant. Every master is elected for a year, so it's a rolling sort of position. And it's just a good way of keeping good governance and for avoiding, monopolies and things like that. So
what's the master's role within the company?
It's really guiding the company through the year, opening all of the ceremonial events, the processions, the court dinners, entering they oversee the entering of all the new apprentices through the books as well. That's not observed so much these days, but we have records going back from the early times. Most of those volumes are kept in the Guildhall Library now, but this is the apprentice book, starting in the 1700s, where any apprentice in London would be brought forward, usually with their parent, their father, and then inscribed here and recorded as bound to a master. And what that means is that the apprentice would be taken on under the shoemaker, typically for 5 years, and would be fed, lodged, washed under his master in exchange for serving the master and learning the craft of shoemaking.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Look at this, 1726. Shows the date, and then I guess what their compensation, £15 charity money.
That's right. Yeah, it shows so there would be a financial contribution, and it typically says bound to, so citizen of Cordwainer of London. So that would be the master, probably a bound. So you'd have to be operating as a shoemaker in London. You'd have to be a member of the guild, and you'd have to be a freeman. A freeman of the guild and a freeman of London.
Really?
And that would entitle you both to own property, so you could open your shop, and then you could accept an apprentice. And if you did not satisfy those conditions, you couldn't really operate within London. And that ensured, along with other things, a certain standard, a certain quality, protecting obviously the buyers, the population, and maintaining certain levels.
And how important was that also to just the quality and standards of the trade?
I think it would be fair to say that that philosophy has traveled through time, and I think that's what's key about the guild, is that it's been in existence uninterrupted for 700 years. And what was initially regimented through rules, administration, eventually just became part and parcel of the way a London craft trade would operate, whether that be in tailoring, gunsmithing, goldsmithing, shoemaking. All of these trades would have had their own guilds, and that whole philosophy has permeated through time, and I think has made and contributed to what English and London shoemaking is today.
Amazing. Tell me about these samples. These look quite interesting.
So these are just another element to the guild, is that to be received as a master, you'd have to, so that meant being able to operate as under your own name, you'd have to produce a masterpiece. And these are some of the masterpieces still held in the company. And much like the competition which we know today, which has been revived in the last few years, these are just display of skills.
Really? Wow.
And so if you look at the finesse of the stitching, the whole way the shoe is made, so you have to bear in mind there were no sewing machines at this time. Everything, including the upper, is hand sewn.
Wow. I mean, look at the heel stack and the number of layers you have here.
And I love looking at the stitching here, and you read in some of the books that typically you'd use a boar's bristle to sew a welt on, but that would be too thick for this sort of stuff. So it was said that the shoemaker would borrow a hair from his daughter's locks, to sew the shoe.
Really?
And I'm willing to believe it. When you look at the thinness of the stitch, I mean, you need a lens.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, you can barely see it right there. That's extraordinary.
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, it can even be sewn without perforating the leather.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then would you at that time also have had turned pumps?
Yeah, the turned shoe came into creation around the medieval period.
Okay.
And it wasn't
So
made
that
on the
predates
last.
all of this.
It predates all of them, yeah.
Mm.
It was just sewn together. There was no last, and then they would just flip it inside out.
Interesting.
The pinnacle of the turn shoe construction is right before it died.
Okay.
And the difficulty is building in the heel stiffener and the toe box as well, and then flipping everything inside out.
Because that's hard leather.
It's hard leather, so you have to do it. You have to sew everything whilst it's soaked, and then flip it inside out, so you're constrained by
Before
time.
it dries.
Exactly, yeah.
Amazing.
So these are just, as I say, display of skills, which were then sort of just kept within the archive of the company.
They're called masterpieces. So you
That's
had to
right.
submit one in order to become a master.
Precisely, yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
And what about these?
So these are two examples of turn shoes. They're ladies' shoes, occasional shoes, one in black moire silk, extremely, extremely fine. So obviously the skill here is to make the shoe without destroying it, because it's just so delicate. But it's made to be very, very flexible, very light. And the sole is just one layer. The sole and the insole is basically just one layer.
Yeah. Looks like a thin layer at that.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. And you make it inside out, so you know that it's a turn shoe because of these two nail points here.
Okay.
And that secures the piece of leather onto the wooden last. You sew the shoe on and then flip everything inside out.
And this one right here?
So that's exactly the same thing, but it has the addition of a heel. And this is your sort of classic wedding shoe, made out of very, very white, supple.
It's like a goat skin?
Yeah, goat skin.
Kid skin, maybe?
Kid skin, yeah. And with a wooden heel, and made in exactly the same way. So we've got that little nail point there, and you can just see how thin the leather is at the edge.
Extraordinary.
And then, so we've got the buckle shoe by Flack and Smith, made in the early 20th century. And this is kind of the oldest style of shoe in the modern era.
Yeah.
So going from the 1600s onwards.
And this is a hand welt.
This is a hand welt, yeah. So this has actually got a special name where the edge is beveled. It's called a clump shoe. You see it mostly in books. It just kind of makes, it's a visual effect. It makes the shoe looks lighter than it is. There's a bit of difficulty in making that, but yeah, this is a welted shoe with a beveled waist, as you still find today. And then the evolution from this to this is basically turning this model into something that you can simply slip on. Making something a lot more occasional. Lined in silk.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So I thought that was a really, really nice touch, having the whole shoe lined in silk, and it's only appropriate given it's an occasional shoe, something that you're going to wear on a special day. So why not make it all the more special by having something unique in the lining and kind of. So we take that on, and when I make a customer a pair of opera pumps, I'll typically take a sample of the facings on their black tie or white tie and include that into the shoe to kind of really make it their own.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. And then finally.
And finally the opera pump. So this is actually my own pair. And so the only thing which is substituted from here to here is the silk bow.
Okay.
To kind of make it slightly more casual, at least in the thinking of the period.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's probably the most formal thing you could wear. But yeah.
What about material?
So typically these are, so now if you buy one off the shelf, they would be made in patent.
Yeah, generally not a big fan of patent.
No, so just for context, patent is genuine leather, which has then been coated with a sort of cellulose finish. So it's low maintenance, it just continuously shines. And you can just wear it and wear it and wear it.
But there's a degree of like syntheticness to
Exactly,
patent.
yeah. and I'm totally on side with you with this. And then for the purpose of sort of authenticity, I tend to prefer making mine with baby calf.
Okay.
So this is
Versus just a calfskin.
Yes, so this is a typical calf skin. So this is box calf that you would use to make
Pair of Oxfords.
Pair of Oxfords, exactly, which is, you've got two different grades there. And then baby calf is the same thing, but taken from at a much younger age. And it just gives you far more suppleness, a much tighter grain to achieve that hand shine.
Yeah.
That hand polish.
Okay.
And
shines
so,
up more easily.
And guarantees a little bit more comfort than your standard kind of Oxford.
Okay. So is it a softer leather?
Yes, much softer.
And what else, like what's this right here? So this is baby calf.
That's also calf, but it's glacé calf. So it's a slightly different material. It's already got that shine on it, but it can be prone to a bit of cracking. So I would suggest going for this. And then,
what would you make out of glacé calf? If anything.
You could make, well, it's all for purpose. That would be lining. This is also baby calf, but as you can see, the quality is not as good.
Okay.
But this is just a sort of swatch book of vintage baby calf. So typically it's not a leather you'd find easily nowadays.
Okay.
So I keep a stock of these things, and then...
Is that something you enjoy? I mean, again, you approach shoemaking, you come to it with a background that's, in many ways quite unique. I mean, there's not very many people, that are shoemakers via art history, being a gallerist. Yeah. I mean, is there anything about the shoemaking itself that you particularly find yourself enjoying?
Well, I think like the way that you approach things, I like to look at shoemaking in all of its aspects. And one of them, obviously, is the quality of the materials that I'm using. And the quality of the leather production over time has changed, because the value of a animal skin is only 3%. So the leather trade is really at the mercy of the meat production.
Okay.
But all that's to say is that quality of leather changes over time, and so it's worthwhile keeping a stock of old things because it was not produced the way that it used to be.
Okay.
And so I stock a lot of vintage leathers. And in the techniques as well, it's a kind of all-encompassing approach. And so I like to brew the stain myself. The edge finishing as well is done using the period tools. I mean, most shoemakers try and use kind of the old tools that were made around the Victorian period.
Yeah, because I know, in the beginning of your journey, I mean, you were also refurbishing old tools.
That's right, yeah. Well, it's just hand in hand now. You can't really buy good tools off the shelf, and so if you're going to do good work, you need good tools, and the only way to get those now is to kind of learn how to refurbish and do them up and be able to use them again.
Are there any tools that are particular to making a pair of opera pumps that you wouldn't say necessarily be using on a pair of Oxfords?
Yes, so one of the West End tradition dictates the grade in which you make a shoe. So a lightweight shoe, you'd have a finer wheel at the top of your heel, and then obviously all of these edges demand a different edge iron according to the thickness. So this is it's about a 1/8 or 1/16 edge iron. You'd need a different one here for the waist. So all of the finishing irons would be completely different from what you'd use on an Oxford, for example. Okay. And then it would change again if you were to make a boot or different shoes, different derbies in different grades with a double sole, midsole, beveled waist, etc. Yeah.
Okay, and what about the bow? Because you have a square bow here, and I think that traditionally I probably would prefer a butterfly. Yeah. But is that also part of the bespoke process, is choosing how that's made?
Yeah, we can make so the bow can be made either in grosgrain or in silk classically. And I'll be happy to, you can go for a square bow like this, a butterfly bow, and we'll make a few designs for you to look at and see what you like best.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Well, this is exciting. So definitely this, which I love. I have to say, I'm so excited about this. Yes. I've been looking forward to this for, really 2 decades. So I always said, one day I'm going to have a pair of opera pumps made bespoke. And, here we go. This is the day that dream's finally fulfilled. Yeah. And I can't think of anyone better than with you, William. So What's the next step then? I guess we probably have to take measurements.
We'll take some measurements. We'll go through the usual measurement process, and then I'll take everything back to the workshop. I'll carve your last.
Okay.
Design the pump, design the bows. Bring you back in for a fitting, and we'll sort of take it from there.
Okay. And is the last for an opera pump different than what you would use for a casual, which is different than what you would use for like a lace-up?
It can only, so there's two things. So when you make a pump, you are making a loafer last, essentially, and then you have to decide whether you want to make a specific slipper last, where you'd have a slightly lower heel, or if you want to keep it at the regular height, and then we could use that to make your loafers,
so that
for example.
pitch would affect the way of the last is done, so you can't just use the same last and throw a different heel block on.
I think for simplicity's sake, and you know, back in the days, a gentleman would have up to 3-4 different pairs of lasts. But nowadays, both from a stylistic point of view and a practical point of view, I like to stick to a slightly higher heel, which you can find on a loafer.
Yeah.
And that gives us the ability to just run the gamut of the type of things that you might commission.
So you'd use the same last for casual as you would.
I would,
a pump.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I like the idea of a slightly taller heel. Give it a little more height than
Exactly. Yeah. Make sure you're standing straight.
Standing straight. And again, you know, just looking at the heel here, I mean, it's one of those just hallmarks of a well-made bespoke shoe. I mean, this being has a seam. Can you do it with the seamless back? Do you ever?
We could do a whole cut. It's slightly unusual, but we could do it. Yeah.
I don't really have a strong opinion. I'm just curious. I mean, in some ways, I kind of like the visual line.
It gives a little structure, it gives a little geometry. I quite like it, I have to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably keep that. But again, just looking at the back of the heel and just how neatly this sits underneath the heel of the foot or the shoe, again, it's just one of those hallmarks of a bespoke shoe that you simply do not find on ready to wear.
And in the spirit of maybe, you know, making something a bit special and looking back at the display models, perhaps we could make the heel lifts a little bit thinner and kind of bring in a bit of element of...
Now you're talking. That's exciting. How many heel lifts, I mean, would you have on a normal shoe? This is
typically they're about 4 millimeter thick each. If you're doing the classical 1 1/8 height heel.
Yeah.
So, you know, perhaps we could divide that by 2, make them about 2 mil thick, you know, and that will just set it off. Well,
I like the little embellishment.
It'll be it'll be very discreet, but you'll know
it. I'll know it. That's what matters, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to look at these, you know, historic samples. I mean, I mean, this one actually is not all that fine, you know, compared to...
the other one is really...
To this one right here.
That's the showstopper.
I mean, this thing is, you know, I couldn't even count them without taking over a minute, you know.
Absolutely.
And even the shape of this, wow, amazing. It's interesting, you know, the ontogeny of the word masterpiece, right? Incredible. Wow, this is exciting. I couldn't be any more thrilled. And so I guess let's go take some measurements.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Let's go.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we'll start by taking your measurements, Kirby, if you'd like to take a seat.
Thank you. Excellent. Exciting. Take these off?
Yes, please. So I'll take a draft of your feet first. I'll start with the left and run through the whole process together.
Where it all begins.
Exactly. So I'll just run this under your foot and then keep everything nice and vertical. Just going to move you back a little bit. Perfect. So we always start by taking a draft of the foot.
Does everyone take measurements the same way, or does every shoemaker kind of have their own? And
there's a general procedure. I think this is pretty unavoidable. I've never seen a shoemaker make
do it without
a pair,
that.
Without the draft. And the arch as well, it's pretty key. So I like to do.
But have you added measurements to your from how you were trained?
I'll show you a few things that I sort of picked up from reading and observation. So that's the first 2 marks, and then I'll mark where your joints are. So these are the sort of anchor points around which we build the shoe. You've got a bone laterally and medially here. And then you've got your instep bone here.
Yeah, which is quite sensitive for me.
Yeah. Now with a slip-on shoe, typically the foot is not covered in this area, but it still helps me to just plan things around.
And are the measurements the same for a slipper like what we're
Yeah,
making?
the measurements are the same, but then how we navigate around them will be slightly different. So if I was to make a lace shoe for you, for example, I would add some ease around this section because we're just behind the point where the shoe folds. In the instep, it kind of depends on the type of foot you have. If you've got a very springy foot.
But the measurements would be the same. I mean,
measurements
you could go
would be
off
the
of
same.
these measures and do...
But then we tend to add or subtract according to the style of shoe that we're making. And then I'll take a profile. So I'm just going to lift your foot gently. Perfect, thank you. And this is just giving me a nice idea of the slope and the shape of your heel and of your instep. So I kind of have almost a 3D map of where things are located. And then I'll take just a contour of your joint just to see how the volume is spread around.
Is one, last more difficult than the others? Comparing an opera pump or a pump to a casual to a lace up?
The making is not the difficult part. It's more just a reflection around fitting the customer, meeting the customer in the way they want to be fitted.
But is one more difficult
style.
to create a good fit for?
Yeah, loafer is slightly more tricky. When you're making a lace shoe, you have a bit of play because obviously you've got the lacing, which is allowing you to adjust. And that's why they're so much more common as the standard shoe you would typically start with.
Yeah.
Because they just adapt to so many occasions of life. The loafer is becoming more common in use, and because of its sort of casual element, you can also wear it at the office. So, but I mean, I'll happily do both and start off. I know that some people don't like to start with a loafer last, but I kind of relish the challenge. So
Yeah, okay.
Not really a problem.
But here we are starting with an upper pump.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, so we'll do your right now. And the same thing again, so we're just going to, I'm just going to move you slightly forward. Perfect. And then maybe just, thank you. And as I'm taking these contours, I'm also kind of observing the general shape of your foot, whether your arch is quite high or low, the general fleshiness or boniness of things. And that'll guide me into deciding areas where I'll apply pressure and areas where I'll lift pressure off to make sure nothing
are you kind
pinches.
of nudging or kind of pushing the foot around at all?
A little bit, yeah. So typically what I like to do, anything behind the ball here will, in your shoes, will be anatomically correct. So there's little element of design apart from having a pair of heels, which is quite important. But what I like to do
When you say pair of heels, like matching heels?
Matching heels, yeah. Sometimes it's unavoidable. You have one heel bigger than the other because you can't compromise between style and fit. But what we like to do is kind of maintain your foot around this area to support you as you walk throughout the day. And then on the forepart, on the other hand, it's the opposite. We want to make sure we're not clipping on your big toes, little toes. Those sort of compressions can lead to a lot of pain. Whereas applying at the back of the foot, where we have these fleshy areas, so you're pushing on muscle, is risk-free and tends to cause greater comfort generally.
Really? Okay.
So that's what we'll be doing. And then again, thank you. Just going to do this profile. And then I'm just going to have a quick look at the height of your joints as well. This is just a little extra measure we do. So you were asking about, this is not typically done. I know that some of my colleagues do this as well.
And as you're going about making the last, I mean, you're checking back to these measures and...
All the time, yeah.
But then you're also, you said, you know, interpreting these measurements to kind of add allowances or take away. I mean, that's based off your skill as a last maker.
Yeah, and there are people doing things in different ways. As you'll later on see, I focus not only on the top of the last, but the bottom as well.
Okay.
And as I'm looking at your feet, I'm looking at the joint here, your toes, and I may look at maybe sinking those in slightly, maybe giving you a bit of metatarsal support behind,
okay.
So behind the toe areas, these sorts of things, yeah. I'll just check this foot as well, please.
Okay, what about toe shapes? I mean, can you do all toe shapes on, like, for all feet, or is that also kind of limited by the client's foot in terms of how round or how square you would go?
Well, anything's possible, but it's just whether it tends to work out in the end or not. I always try and satisfy somebody's desire in terms of shape. A square shape is not always as easy to achieve with certain kinds of feet. If you have a slightly wide foot, like cases for myself, it's a little bit trickier, but there are ways around it. It really depends on whether a customer wants something very chiseled and angular, if they want something softer, and generally softer shapes tend to be a little bit more forgiving in you know, what you yield. So okay, so we'll go on to taking some measurements now. Just take my tape measure out. I'll pull this out if that's okay. Thank you. So, start with the left as usual. So if I can just ask you to rest your heel on my calf, like that, and then, so I always take measures load off. I know that some people like the customer to be standing. I take the majority of my measures seated like this.
And how is that different? How is it weighted, unweighted, semi-weighted?
Well, it just impacts on the way that the shoe is going to hold your foot. So, in my view, if I was to take the measurements of your feet standing, your feet would already be spread, and your shoe would be a lot more bigger, and you wouldn't have that element of support. And with this method, you're just accounting for the customer standing up, the foot spreading, and then the shoe kind of wrapping around that and supporting the wearer.
At what point do you begin to visualize the shape of the last?
Once we've finished all these measurements, I start looking at the draft, I look at the angle of the toes, and then we start seeing the type of lines that we could be developing and what sort of shape we'll end up with, yeah. Okay, that's that one done. I'll do the right one now. Measurement with this. Oh. So, I'll first take a measure seated. And then if you'd like to stand up as well, please.
How much of a difference is there between seated and standing?
Typically, it's between 1/4 and 1/2 size.
Really? Okay.
But it just allows me to double check that and see. You'll invariably have one foot which is a little bit more springy than the other, and I'll work my last off that to make sure you've got plenty of toe space.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that should be everything I need, and yeah, we can look at style now and decide where we go from there.
Yeah, excellent. William, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Very exciting. So what's next, and I guess how long until the next step?
Well, I'll take all these measurements back to the studio, look at the choices we've made, and I'll start by carving a last, get everything rolling, and we should be able to see each other back in about 3 months, 3 or 4 months.
Wow, exciting. Thank you so much. I look forward to it, and I can't tell you how excited I am for this.
Likewise, yeah.
Thank you.